June 30th, 2025. Federal District Court, Newark, New Jersey. Apple's motion to dismiss. Denied. The Department of Justice antitrust case proceeds to trial. Apple argued the government failed to prove monopoly power, failed to show harm to consumers, failed to define the market correctly. Judge Julien Neals rejected every argument. 88-page ruling. The case moves forward. At stake, $201 billion in annual iPhone revenue. 51% of Apple's entire business. And I have the court documents, the market share data, and the potential remedy calculations that prove this threatens every Apple shareholder. March 21st, 2024. Department of Justice files lawsuit. 16 states join: Arizona, California, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, Vermont, Wisconsin. Allegation: Apple illegally monopolizes the US smartphone market. Section 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The complaint: Apple maintains dominance not through better products, but through anti-competitive restrictions. Third-party developers blocked, cross-platform messaging degraded, and non-Apple smartwatches limited, digital wallets restricted, super apps suppressed. August 1st, 2024. Apple files motion to dismiss. Their defense? 3 arguments. First, market definition wrong. DOJ claims performance smartphone market, where Apple has 70% share. Apple says that's artificial. Global smartphone market matters. Android dominates globally. Second, no consumer harm. iPhone users choose Apple, pay premium prices willingly, high satisfaction. Third, no anti-competitive conduct. Apple's restrictions protect security and privacy. Curated ecosystem benefits consumers. Apple requests complete dismissal, entire case thrown out. Before discovery. Before depositions. Before trial. 10 months later. June 30th. Judge rules. Here's the court ruling. June 30th, 2025. Judge Julien Neals. United States District Court for the District of New Jersey. Quote, the court denied Apple's motion to dismiss and rejected their arguments that the refusal to deal doctrine applies in this case. End quote. 88 pages. Every aspect of Apple's motion rejected. Market definition stands. Consumer harm allegations sufficient. Anti-competitive conduct claims plausible. The case survives dismissal. Proceeds to discovery. Internal Apple documents will be produced. Executives will be deposed. Trial scheduled. March 2024. Lawsuit filed. August 2024. Motion to dismiss filed. June 2025. Motion denied. Every step Apple hoped to avoid. Discovery. The government will request internal emails, strategy documents, pricing analyses, executive communications. Tim Cook could be deposed, like Bill Gates in Microsoft, under oath. Questioned about Apple's competitive practices. If this kind of antitrust economics investigation is new to you, subscribe. We expose billion-dollar legal strategies. Hit subscribe. Because this motion denial wasn't surprising to antitrust experts, Apple's market position made dismissal unlikely. Apple's official statement. Quote, we believe this lawsuit is wrong on the facts and the law, and we will continue to vigorously fight it in court. Unquote. Same statement after the ruling. No specifics, no counter-arguments, generic denial. Apple's legal strategy? Delay, drag out discovery. Appeal, every ruling. Settle only if forced. Stop. Before I show you Apple's actual market dominance numbers, you need to understand what monopoly power means legally, because 65% market share isn't automatically illegal. It's how Apple maintains it that matters. Sherman Antitrust Act. Section 2. Monopolization illegal. But what counts? 2 elements. First, monopoly power in a relevant market. Second, willful acquisition or maintenance of that power. Not through superior product, not through business acumen, through exclusionary or predatory conduct. Apple's case involves both elements. DOJ alleges Apple has monopoly power, 65% overall market, 70% performance smartphone market, and maintains it through 5 specific anti-competitive practices. Super apps blocked, cloud streaming suppressed, messaging degraded, smartwatches restricted, digital wallets limited, Each restriction protects iPhone dominance. Performance smartphones. That's the DOJ's key market definition. Not all smartphones. Performance smartphones. Devices priced above certain threshold. Premium features, high-end processors, advanced cameras. In that market, Apple controls 70%. Samsung distant second. Google, Motorola, far behind. And here's where this affects you. If you own Apple stock directly or through index funds, you're exposed. Apple represents roughly 7% of S&P 500. Quick question. Do you own Apple stock directly or through funds? Type AAPL below if yes. Because what I'm about to reveal shows exactly how much revenue depends on practices DOJ calls illegal. Here's Apple's revenue structure. Fiscal year 2024. Total revenue $391 billion. iPhone alone $201 billion. 51%. But iPhone enables everything else. App Store revenue 30% of every transaction. Services revenue. Apple Music, iCloud, Apple Care, Apple Pay all require iPhone. Wearables, Apple Watch pairs only with iPhone. AirPods optimized for iPhone. Ecosystem lock-in generates hundreds of billions. DOJ alleges those restrictions are anti-competitive. Send this to anyone holding Apple stock. Because if DOJ wins, the ecosystem breaks. The App Store. 30% commission. Developers pay Apple for every transaction. Can't offer alternative payment methods. Can't direct users to external websites for purchases. Can't tell customers about cheaper options outside the app. Epic Games sued over this, partially won under California law. Europe's Digital Markets Act forced changes. But US market? Still Apple's rules. Annual App Store revenue estimated over $80 billion, 30% of billions in transactions. Profit margins near 100% on digital services. Pure software. No manufacturing costs. No inventory. Just distribution fees. iMessage. Green bubbles versus blue bubbles. Android messages appear green. Downgraded quality. Group chats break, videos compress, features disabled. DOJ cites internal Apple emails. Executives discussed making Android messaging worse intentionally. Keep iPhone users from switching. Social pressure. Teenagers especially. Green bubble stigma. Apple could make cross-platform messaging work better. RCS support. But chooses not to. Wait, I know what you're thinking. Is bad messaging really anti-competitive? Let me show you why Judge Neals said yes when you look at Apple's own internal strategy documents discussing exactly this lock-in effect. Here's Apple's US market dominance. Second quarter 2025. iOS holds 58.44% of United States smartphone market. Android 41.56%. But performance smartphone segment. Apple 70%. Revenue per user. iPhone users spend $101 monthly on tech. Android users $50. App spending. iPhone users average 1.64 per app. Android users 43 cents. Remember that motion denial? Judge ruled this market concentration combined with restrictive practices equals monopoly power. This is why I investigate antitrust economics. Subscribe to see what monopoly cases cost shareholders. Because Apple's market value $3 trillion depends on maintaining this dominance. 1998. Department of Justice sues Microsoft. Internet Explorer bundled with Windows. Netscape browser crushed. Browser wars. Microsoft argued bundling benefits consumers. Integrated experience. Better performance. DOJ argued leveraging operating system monopoly into browser market. Anti-competitive. Trial lasted years. Bill Gates deposed. Petulant. Evasive. Videos played in court. Damaged Microsoft's image. Eventually, no breakup. But restrictions imposed. Monitored for years. Apple's case? Is same legal framework. Leveraging iPhone dominance into adjacent markets. Super apps. Messaging. Wallets. Watches. App developers. Beeper Mini, built app allowing Android users to message iPhone users without green bubbles. Used reverse engineering. No Apple APIs. December 2023, Apple shut it down. Immediately. Claimed security concerns. Developer Eric Migikovsky protested. Users wanted it, paid for it. Apple blocked it anyway. This pattern repeats. Developer builds innovative app, competes with Apple service. Apple rejects it or removes it. Reason cited: violates guidelines, duplicates functionality, security risk, but effect: eliminates competition. Tile, Bluetooth tracker company, founded 2011. AirTag competitor, testified before Congress. Apple restricted background location access for third-party trackers, but AirTag, full access, same functionality, different rules. Tile's CEO, Apple used privileged platform access to advantage its own product, but court documents don't show the small companies that never launched because Apple's restrictions made their business model impossible. The startups that pivoted away from iOS. The innovation that never happened. They don't teach this in business school. Now you know what tech entrepreneurs face building on Apple's platform. Have you developed for iOS or had app rejected? Share experience below, because this case sets precedent for every developer. Remedies. That's what matters for investors. If DOJ wins, what changes? Complaint request quote. Relief is needed to cure any competitive harm. Vague intentionally. Could include behavior modifications. Open APIs to third parties. Allow alternative app stores. Permit sideloading. Remove app store restrictions. Or structural remedies. Breakup. Separate services from hardware. Split app store into independent entity. Divest certain business units. Range from annoying to catastrophic for Apple. And I saved the remedy economics for last, because other countries already forced changes. EU's Digital Markets Act. We can calculate what US remedies might cost. European Union, Digital Markets Act. Effective, March 2024. Forces Apple to allow alternative app stores. Permit sideloading. Open NFC for payments. Enable browser engine choice. Apple complied. In Europe only. Maintains restrictions in US. But revenue impact. EU App Store downloads down. Alternative stores gaining share. Developer fees declining. 30% commission bypassed. If US forces same changes nationwide, that's 200 billion iPhone revenue at risk. Check your Apple holdings. This precedent shows exactly what DOJ remedies cost. Send to anyone with AAPL in portfolio. Because Google already lost similar search case. Remedies pending. Here's what's at stake financially. iPhone 201 billion annually, but interconnected. Services revenue 97 billion profit. Depends on iPhone installed base. App Store 80 billion transactions. 30% to Apple. Wearables. Apple Watch 31% global smartwatch market. Requires iPhone. AirPods. HomePod. All ecosystem products. Remember motion denial? Remember 70% performance smartphone share? Now calculate remedies. Force alternative app stores. Lose app store fees. 30 billion plus annually. Open platform. Lose ecosystem lock-in. You will see this in Apple earnings if DOJ wins. Question whether positioned correctly before changes forced. Subscribe tracking antitrust remedy economics, because structural breakup could cost 100 billion plus market value. Here's the economic summary. Apple motion dismissed. Case proceeds. 70% performance smartphone market share. 201 billion iPhone revenue annually. 97 billion services profit. All dependent on ecosystem restrictions. DOJ calls illegal. Trial years away. But precedent set. Microsoft, Google. Cases dragged on. Eventually settled or lost. Here's my controversial take. Apple will fight to Supreme Court. Lose eventually. Settle for behavior modifications, not breakup. But 10% revenue hits still 50 billion gone. Tell me I'm wrong, comments. You can't unknow this. Every Apple earnings call. Every iOS update. You'll wonder what restrictions DOJ challenges next. What will you do with information? Should I investigate Google remedies next? Or Amazon FTC case? Interesting suggestion gets next deep dive. Apple versus DOJ. Motion denied. Case proceeds trial. 201 billion iPhone revenue at stake. 70% performance smartphone monopoly challenged. Ecosystem restrictions under scrutiny. This case determines whether Apple maintains pricing power or faces forced platform openness. If you want to understand how antitrust battles reshape tech business models affect portfolio returns, this only channel calculates both legal risk, financial impact. Subscribe, hit bell. I audit monopoly economics. mainstream media ignores every week. Click here, Qualcomm ARM victory, or authors AI copyright battle. See you there.